All right, welcome back to the channel. It's your boy Fanon, and in this video, the Errol Spence Jr. Terence Crawford saga continues. Errol Spence Jr. lets Terence Crawford know, do not go to 154. I'm looking for you next. Let's talk about that in this video. All right, welcome back to the channel. It's your boy Fanon. In this video, we're going to talk about the welterweight division again. Conversation never gets old for me because I'm a boxing fan, and I am anxiously anticipating getting a fight between Errol Spence Jr. and Terence Crawford for the undisputed welterweight championship of the world, provided Errol Spence Jr. gets past YORDENIS UGAS. And Errol Spence Jr. was in Dallas this weekend, and a local fight this weekend, and let the crowd know and the world know that's exactly what he plans on doing. But before I get into the subject matter of the video, please make sure, if you are not subscribed, and thank you if you are subscribed, I greatly appreciate the support. If you're not subscribed, make sure you hit the subscribe button and then hit the bell icon so that you can be notified of when we release more videos, and make sure that you hit all notifications so that you get all notifications. If you don't do that, then you'll just get them occasionally and you may miss some of this good boxing talk, which we do every morning, 8 a.m. Central Standard Time in a live stream, Sunday through Friday. All right, so let's get into this. Two of the best fighters in the world, in my opinion, two of the best five fighters in the world in a marquee weight class, Errol Spence Jr. and Terence Crawford, have been on a collision course for several years. However, that collision course has stalled out because of, for whatever reasons, Errol Spence Jr. has been collecting belts over on the PBC side of the street. Terence Crawford has been taking care of his business over there. However, a lot of people are frustrated about it, in their attempts to get that fight, including Terence Crawford himself, who just recently, through his manager himself, and also Bernie the Boxer, who's a camp member of his, has let it known that if he does not get this fight next with Errol Spence Jr., he is bouncing and heading up to the 154-pound division and looking for undisputed there. And when he said that, I thought, man, that is a good idea, because who knows whether or not the PBC and the powers that be are going to actually let that fight take place. But Errol Spence Jr. himself, like I said, this weekend, I believe it was in Dallas, but he was in the ring for a local fight, and he said, look, what I'm about to do is I'm going to fight YORDENIS UGAS. After I beat YORDENIS UGAS and I've collected that last belt, I'm going to see about that WBO championship to get that as well. Now, he did not say Terence Crawford's name. However, seeing as Terence Crawford does not have a fight coming up and Terence Crawford has that WBO belt, it is very safe to assume that he's talking about fighting Terence Crawford. So I'm encouraged by that, because Errol Spence Jr. at the end of the day is the big money man in the division, and to see him consistently pushing for undisputed gives me hope that that fight can be made. Now, I don't think that Errol Spence Jr. is the only guy that has any say-so about that. The finances and that type of stuff, that type of situation may be a problem as well. However, I think, and I've always maintained that a lot of this talk back and forth about, 60-40 splits and all that stuff, that at the end of the day, when they're sitting in front of that, when they're sitting down trying to make that fight, I think Errol Spence Jr. is going to be a reasonable person, and I would hope that they could be able to negotiate with Al Heyman and those guys to be able to get a fair rate for Terence Crawford, where he feels like, he's a major part, if not a 50-50 part of what is going to make that fight big. And that fight is something that I think really needs to happen for boxing fans, and it's something where either one of those fighters, if they did not take that fight, and provided that they truly think that they can win, right? And I think in this particular instance, you have two guys that really do believe they can win. Terence Crawford believes he can win. Errol Spence Jr. believes he can win that fight. If those guys take that fight and are able to make that fight, I don't see why that fight cannot be as big. It cannot be as big as a Deontay Wilder versus Tyson Fury fight. To me, it seems like all of the pieces and all of the stuff that has been put into place would make that fight easily as big as a Deontay Wilder Tyson Fury fight. Because the math to me, because I know what Tim Smith said, where he was like, if you look at the past and you look at what Terence Crawford's pay-per-views have done in the past, it really doesn't justify the type of money that he's going to want to make. But if you look at the Deontay Wilder fight versus Tyson Fury, you could really say the same thing as well. That Tyson Fury, Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury, they were going to want to make a big amount of money, but neither one of those guys had ever really had a history of being on pay-per-view. But what you got after you had the first fight, I think would do like a $16 million gate, something like that in Las Vegas, wound up being a really huge gate, did a lot on pay-per-view. So those guys wound up being very, very happy with the outcome of that fight on pay-per-view. Also, same thing applied for the second fight and the third fight, where those guys wound up making $20-30 million for that for that trilogy of fights. I don't see why in the world Errol Spence Jr. and Terence Crawford cannot be just as big as that. Terence Crawford's got a bigger name in the United States than Tyson Fury had. And Deontay Wilder, although he has a bigger name than Errol Spence Jr. does, I think that the combination of those two things is going to make that fight big enough for those guys to get the money that they both get the money that they want. Also, with some flexible negotiations of, all right, maybe, we're going to guarantee 2 fights, right? No matter however the fight goes, we'll guarantee 2 fights, right? Where, Errol may get the lion's cut in the first, but then the winner can get the bigger cut in the second, in the second fight. A lot of people have made suggestions like that. Deontay Wilder was willing to do that with Tyson Fury to be able to prove that he was the best. Who knows? Errol Spence Jr. may be willing to do that, because Errol Spence Jr., when he keeps saying that he wants that belt, is telling you that that's something he desires for his career, and a fight and beating Terence Crawford is going to get that dude as the #1 pound-for-pound fighter in the world, in my opinion. So I think for the future of Errol Spence Jr., it's really important to get that Terence Crawford fight. Same thing for Terence Crawford. If he's able to beat Errol Spence Jr., solidifies himself, as a top pound for pound fighter in a big draw in boxing, man. And I think that just the two of those guys coming together is going to be like peanut butter and chocolate, man, making something special in a Reese's peanut butter cup. However, at the very least, I'm really happy that Errol Spence Jr. keeps pushing the notion that he wants to fight. Terence Crawford keeps pushing the notion that he wants to fight, and hopefully, the twain shall meet at the end of this year. But anyway, that's my take on the matter. You let me know what you think in the comment section. And with that, I'm out. Peace.